Life is just complete roller coaster, right? You don't know what's going to happen. And I got a phone call. Jake, you got to come home. Your dad's dead. It's like, did not see that coming. I lost my father. He died as a young man, only 48 years old, from a heart attack. And I received an inheritance in my mid-20s. And so I've spent the best part of the last 15 years trying to figure out, like, well, how do you keep this stuff? I had pounds sitting in a bank account in the UK, and I'm in my mid-20s. It's like, if I leave it there for the next 10 years, it's going to buy less shit. What do you do with it? It's important for families to really think about like what they own and how well defended they are. Most people are freaking out, right? Most people don't know how to pay the bills. Most people don't know how to get a gun, travel. Most people are, Bitcoin for millennials. Most millennials are freaking out. One of the big lessons from my investing journey is that you can cheat. And what I mean by that is you're not in an exam at school trying to peer over someone else's sheet of is that the right answer? You can actually look at how other people make investments and you can study them and you can see, well, where have they got their money? I don't care what you say, just tell me what you own and that tells me everything. What does it mean that Bitcoin's purchasing power is increasing over time? Well, how much shit can you buy right now and how much shit can you buy in the future? And if that number of stuff is going down, it means that your wealth is being eroded somehow. What's so cool about this experience of podcasting, of Bitcoin, regaining your time is it's incredibly empowering. It fills me with energy. So for me, it's like 8:15 at night. My day started at almost 5 a.m. My little baby's woken me up and then the other child's woken me up. And then before you know it, you're like bang into the day. And I get to sit down and talk to people like yourself. And normally it's like, oh, I should be going to sleep now, but actually just get completely pumped chatting about all this stuff that I see going on. So to talk about controlling my time, actually, maybe I'll continue with that. So I'm basically a stay-at-home dad. And between what was like 4:45 and 9 o'clock in the morning, I was looking after kids, giving them breakfast. I managed to walk the dog for half an hour and walk down the road and see if there's a property that I was thinking about buying, but realized it's miles away from where we actually want to be. So that's not right. Did a workout for an hour, 9 till 10, and then hopped in the car with my wife and one of my kids and drove her to an appointment. And then we went and had a coffee together, drove back home, looked after the baby for a bit more, threw him in bed. Then the other two girls got dropped back. And then we spent the afternoon together taking them to, my eldest daughter does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a 4.5-year-old, which is awesome. Back home for cooking dinner, bath time, bedtime, read them some books. And now I'm online doing a podcast. So that's kind of how my day fills up. I've got 3 kids under the age of 5 and Bitcoin has bought me the ability to spend time with them. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I had a recent conversation with a friend who was like, we should never sell our Bitcoin and maybe take leverage and do this slightly more sophisticated approach. But I don't mind selling Bitcoin for as rich and as deeper experience as like the beauty of being a father. And it's not something that I've been doing all that long, right? My eldest is only 4.5 years old. But I've been able to figure out a way to finance my life in which I can be as present and as at home as possible, whilst also, frankly, I've had 2 of the best investment return years of my life, which is wild. So that you kind of step back from that focus in some ways and the investment returns have improved, yet I've spent less time thinking about them than ever before. And nice. I think that's what kind of happens with Bitcoin and a Bitcoin allocation, because it just sits there and just pumps away in the background, increasing your purchasing power. And so it's just all about conviction. The more you know, the more you buy. I mean, frankly, years of making a ton of mistakes and then figuring out, well, hang on, maybe there is some value in this thing called Bitcoin. And then here I am today. Who knows where this conversation will go? But yeah, it just fills me with energy. I'm extraordinarily grateful to be in the position that I'm in. And I couldn't be more pumped about the future. Interestingly, most people are freaking out, right? Most people don't know how to pay the bills. Most people don't know how to get a gun, travel. Most people are, Bitcoin for millennials. Most millennials are freaking out. And I'm not. I'm totally fine. And I think they're related.
I think this is something we might have talked about before, but I have similar, right? Like I lurk on Reddit a lot, like in the millennial subreddit or in like the fire subreddit or, any personal finance subreddit. And people talk about like, how much do you earn or how much have you saved or, working towards fire or how are you even able to paying the bills, right? Like, is anyone staying alive? Like you have all these topics, and especially in the millennial subreddit, I think it's very negative towards the future. And I think you and me both, like, we are very positive. Like, we don't have these worries. And again, I don't think it's about how much Bitcoin you have. It's about understanding what you're spending your time on and why, right? Like, I know people who are deep into Bitcoin who have a fiat job at some corporate, but they are not invested in it anymore, right? They are just seeing it like, oh, this is a job and I'm using that to, stay humble, stack sats, live my life, but eventually stack Bitcoin so I can like move out of this, what I'm in now. And like this, what I'm in now is necessary. And it's okay if I don't like it, but I at least have like a pathway to, and like like a North Star, like a direction that could help me like get out of this. Because I think that's what many people, especially in our generation, like run into, is they are doing shit that they don't like, buying things to impress people that they don't like, like that meme. And yeah, I just love that. Like, is that something that changed compared to when you were younger? Like, I personally learned how I viewed money. Like, I always viewed money as buying time to figure out what is next. But Bitcoin actually made me really see that, like understand what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, I personally, I've changed a huge amount. The saying Bitcoin doesn't change, but you change, I believe is completely true. And it's not something that is initially obvious, but becomes more obvious with time. I'm also someone in a very unique position in that I was already in control of a pool of capital. And this stems back to a very bittersweet story in a sense, which is I lost my father. He died as a young man, only 48 years old, from a heart attack. And I received an inheritance in my mid-20s. We sold his home, which I was the eldest son. We decided to sell the property. And so I've spent the best part of the last 15 years trying to figure out, like, well, how do you keep this stuff? And so you've got, in my case, I had pounds sitting in a bank account in the UK and I'm in my mid-20s. It's like, well, if I leave it there for the next 10 years, it's going to buy less shit. And very simple. Everyone kind of just about gets inflation in that sense. But like, what do you do with it? And how do you actually protect it in a way that is not crazily risky, not going to like disappear somehow? And that answering that question is really hard. And I made a lot of mistakes on that journey. But the person I was 20, so I'm 36. The person I was as a 22-year-old, so I was 20 when dad died. 22 years old, I started making my first investments. 25, like major milestone. And I'm very different to the man back then. And I guess part of that is just getting older and becoming a parent. Like, Bitcoin is, as you well know, Bram, an extraordinary tool. And I like to think of it simply as a savings technology. And its function of store of value. When you ask the question, what is money? Well, money is something that does three things: unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value. I actually had a really interesting conversation with Hubertus recently. Shout out to him for coming on my podcast and actually explaining to me that the Austrian School of Economics looks at store of value as just to retain value, not actually to capital growth. And Bitcoin's giving you capital growth over and above storing and purchasing power. And that's a relentlessly optimistic thing. It's like, hang on, so I can buy this actually very low risk. The counterparty risk on Bitcoin, in my opinion, is far lower than basically any traditional investment you can make. And its capital growth is just firing. And so therefore, there's a phrase in the investment space of risk reward, or equally I can't think of the right word right now. Excuse me. Yeah, the risk reward basically is just unbelievable on Bitcoin. When
the asymmetry.
That's right. Yeah. So asymmetric bet. Like, what's the downside? Well, you could put 100 grand in right now. That 100 grand goes to zero. What's the upside? Well, it could be 10 million. Like no one knows. But this is why it's so incredible as podcasters. You can go out and you can speak to someone who is 30 years more experienced than you, and it can sit there and say, this is the best risk reward investment I've ever seen. And you're like,
exactly.
Okay, well, that's probably a good idea for me to look at as well.
I love that you say this, because I say this all the time. Like, my person for that is Greg Foss and Larry
That's exactly
Lepard.
who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so
Larry.
Greg Foss.
These guys
yeah,
are
and Larry,
legends, right? They've been doing it 30, 40 years. It's like, hello, boys. If I was in my 30s, I'd be piling into this. And you're like,
yes,
not a bad person to sit next to. And, well, sorry, Brad, to just finish the point here. One of the big lessons from my investing journey is that you can cheat. And what I mean by that is you're not in an exam at school trying to peer over someone else's sheet of like, is that the right answer? You can actually look at how other people make investments, and you can study them, and you can see, well, where have they got their money? And asking a man what you own. So ask a man what he owns, not what he thinks, is one of my favorite euphemisms of investing, because I don't care what you say, just tell me what you own, and that tells me everything. And so when someone like a Larry or a Greg Foss is out there saying, with all my years of experience, I've never seen an opportunity like this before, and that's why it's a good bet, for me, I feel incredibly comfortable making decisions as part of a wider picture with that.
Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp is leading this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of relying on one institution, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a cold storage multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent custodians, where no single party can move your funds alone, providing an unprecedented level of security. Your assets are protected by a 100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, with all transactions fully auditable on-chain and only executed at your direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all time. Beyond custody, OnRamp provides comprehensive Bitcoin services that include trading, lending, inheritance planning, and IRAs. You can view them as your private Bitcoin banking partner tailored to your wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps you secure your generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. You can sign up at onrampbitcoin.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. If you first want to learn more, you can also book a free consultation via their website to speak with one of their Bitcoin custody experts. Tell them you came through me, and they'll take extra good care of you. Bitcoin is financial sovereignty, so why compromise when you need liquidity? Meet Debify, the Bitcoin-backed lending platform made by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Debify connects you to institutional-grade liquidity and allows you to borrow fiat or stablecoins, all while keeping your Bitcoin 100% under your control with a non-custodial 3 out of 4 multi-sig escrow solution. Get competitive rates from a global marketplace of institutional-grade lenders with loan terms that you choose, from 1 month up to a year. There are no hidden fees and there is no rehypothecation, just pure Bitcoin-aligned lending with the highest level of transparency and security. Are you ready to unlock liquidity without ever selling a single sat? Go to debify.com/Bram, that's BRAM, to check out their current lending offers. That's debify.com/Bram. Yeah, me too, 100%. When I was 35, I read Greg Foss's bio, which says 35 years in a risk chair, and then I listened to podcasts with him, and when I listened to it, I was like, yeah, this is just a rational explanation. Like there are, it just makes sense, So then you could be, and I think that in general is interesting in a Bitcoin journey, right? Just a continuous challenge of answering the question, like, can I still trust myself? Bitcoin is so profoundly simple and open. So I say Bitcoin is an asymmetric opportunity based on publicly available information. Like, you can do the work yourself, you can actually verify the technology yourself, right? But I think that is so unique that the ego is very near, let's say, right? When you come to a certain conclusion about the opportunity that is Bitcoin, my ego went like, yeah, sure, dude. Like, yeah, you figured it out. Like you're you're so smart. This could never be as big as you think it is. But then I listened to someone like Greg, who just explains it very rationally and eloquently, and then I see that he's 35 years in a risk chair. And when I was 35, I was just like, yeah, what the fuck do I know? So I can go along with my ego and be like, oh yeah, sure, like you have no clue. Yeah, you have no clue. Like, look at what this guy is doing, and listen to his reasoning. And I love that is also something that
it's also
that you've seen,
possible, Bram. Just sorry to jump in. It's possible to take those influences and combine them with other areas that, from a very first principles perspective, like, what do I think? And that is the key, because a lot of people, they actually much prefer, talking specifically about managing an inheritance, they'd like to give their money to a financial advisor, say, please deal with this for me. And I used to do that. And now I definitely do not. And that's largely because they all think you're a fucking moron when you turn up and talk about Bitcoin. And honestly, I've had wealth managers sit there and say, yeah, you can't beat inflation. And instead of being like, oh, okay, well, I hope you've given us a good stock to bond portfolio allocation.
Yeah,
it's like, no,
took a
you're
nice
sacked.
jab at it.
You are sacked straight away.
Yeah.
Should be the automatic response, right?
Yes.
And obviously, you'd be a bit more polite about it. Be like, okay, thanks very much for that information. You leave the meeting and then you send an email being like, I think I want to move my funds under management somewhere else, But the point being is, it's like, what do you mean you can't beat inflation? And so there's these people out there that are managing pools of capital that are measuring their performance on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, that has changed on a whim. Like, for the last 50 years, has been changed as many times as, you can blink, basically, and isn't measuring real inflation rates. So you're not even giving me a fair reflection on the purchasing power of this portfolio. And it's absolutely mental. And this is where, we are just incredibly early to Bitcoin. And a lot of people they're just not willing to see it yet. And that's okay. But what I was trying to get to about this process of taking, a wise and experienced investor who's drawn the dots together on Bitcoin themselves, is like, well, what do I think? And to use a startup lens, that this is something I picked up angel investing, is there's a way of looking at a startup investment. There's a couple of things that are fun. One is the golf buggy test. And basically, I think I told you about this, Bram, but you need to, if a startup is so kind of sexy, so to speak, and you get someone investing into it, they will then go to the first tee of the golf club. And as they tee off, they're going to brag to their buddies about this startup that they just put money into.
Yeah.
And so if you as a startup, when you're applying for money from different people, if you're not going to pass the golf buggy test, then you're just not that attractive for people to brag about investing into. And it's probably going to be difficult to raise capital. Well, one, Bitcoin is the best golf buggy test pass I've ever seen, right? People talk about Bitcoin everywhere. There's no marketing department of Bitcoin. It's the most viral brand ever. But number two is this idea that I picked up of investing in lines, not dots. And so if you see for example, Bram, you pitched to me an idea that you've been working on the last 12 hours. For me, that's a data point, right? It's like idea phase. Okay, that's a dot. If we talk about it in 6 weeks' time or 6 months' time, and you've built a prototype, you might even have a little bit of revenue from an early customer, you've identified the market you're going to enter into, well, you've got real progress then. And so you can actually then take a second data point. And if that line for those 2 dots of data points you've taken is actually clearly rapidly progressing, then in theory, that's actually quite a good startup to invest
I like that.
at early stage equity. Yeah. And so I first bought Bitcoin in 2015. And I sold some in 2016 to take my now wife to Japan on holiday. And I sold some in 2017 because I thought the block size war was going to the whole thing was going to go kaput and it was dead forever and just take some money off the table. Thankfully, I didn't sell all of it. And 2020 comes around and the case for Bitcoin just hits me like a ton of bricks. And you see Saylor buying it and calling it a treasury reserve asset. And for me, this is just this massive moment to take a breath. This is the best investment you've ever made. There was no management issue with it, i.e. there was no tenant that didn't pay you. There was no shower that broke and started leaking into the flat below. And there was no dickhead financial advisor who's giving you reports that you can't read properly and isn't actually calculating inflation correctly. It's no, this sat in self-custody the entire time. The return profile's off the charts and there's no counterparty risk. Oh my God, what is this thing? And so I saw Bitcoin through that lens of invest in lines, not dots, as the best line I'd ever seen. Okay, well, now I've got to follow up with this. So yeah, there's lots to it, but it really gets the brain firing.
It's nice because I'm thinking about what many people have told me about like how their Bitcoin journey went. Is like I came across it, I paid some attention, I got some, then it crashed, then I sold, and I didn't think about it anymore. And then at like I don't know, let's say between 1,000 and 4,000 or whatever, like under $5,000. And then like years later, so I didn't think about it anymore, I see Bitcoin is $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000. And for many people, that has been a signal where they're like, hey, wait a minute, I thought this thing
I thought it was dead. What the hell's happened?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that's the second dot. And so that dot went from I think it's dead to holy shit, it's still alive. And it's interesting to see that for many people has actually been some sort of ego trigger that kind of asks like, hey, what did I get wrong here? Because I was so convinced about this trash thing that I sold with, maybe a little profit or even at a loss. And I was so convinced that this was a scam or useless or whatever. And it still survives. Like, how is that possible? So, when you talk about lines and dots, I think about that. And it's many people have that same type of experience, where they. Once I realized that this is just a random idea that was released on a random internet forum, and still exists after 16 years and now holds over $2 trillion worth of value, that's also a signal by itself, right? Like, how is that even possible? Like all the things that could have gone wrong, like you said, the block wars and stuff like that, like this thing is still chugging along. It's like another signal that you could pay attention to.
Well, you just obviously you're changing over time, but the information, at least in my case anyway, is I was still trying to answer questions, and I still had that burning question of like, how do I look after this capital? Like, what is going to ensure that I get capital growth, but how do I make sure that I'm not just pissing it up the wall, right? And it was, I mean, again, I've cited this on other podcasts that people might have heard before, but it was roughly October of 2020, I saw a YouTube video with Michael Saylor and Raoul Pal, and it's called Bitcoin Infiltrates Corporate America. Now, it's obviously interesting to note the direction that Raoul Pal's taken since that time. So now I basically don't listen to any of his content at all.
No, me neither. Yeah.
Saylor said something in that YouTube video that changed my life. And he was basically framing up the problem he had as the CEO and founder of his company at the time, MicroStrategy. It's like, how do I know that the manager of my business 100 years from now has the best chance of survival? I'm going to buy Bitcoin. And I was like, oh my God, that is how I've been trying to think about this pot of money that I've received. And maybe that's actually the answer. Because when you think about, the house that I inherited, it was actually, I was the fourth generation essentially. So my forefather in the 1930s purchased this property in the south of the UK. And there I was as the eldest son of, his lineage going like, well, we can't afford to keep this. I don't want to carry on living here. My father's died too young and stressed by the whole thing. So we're going to have to sell. And so we didn't keep it for 100 years. Even though, like, in theory, you could. And that's not to mention all the different taxes and all the legislation that's cropping up around a real estate investment and how poorly it actually retains purchasing power over time. Is a government bond going to be around in 100 years' time? Is Apple stock going to be around in 100 years' time? Like, even the wealth advisor that you might build some kind of friendship with that is actually basically just the coffee and drinks guy for a fund manager somewhere who's allocating capital across the public markets. Like, are they going to be around 100? Like, no. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Hang on to gold? And then you look at the gold price, and recently it has been ripping, which I absolutely love. And I think the gold price right now is the canary in the inflationary gold mine, and Bitcoin is just going to rack straight past it. But all this stuff with tariffs and everyone dumping bonds, they're fleeing into gold. In particular, look at the RMB price of gold. Like, the Chinese are not messing around. They're buying as much gold as they can get their hands on, and the price is moving as a result. Anyway, long story short, when you take that timeline of 100 years, it really like focuses the mind on like what might work. And for me, it's pretty clear that Bitcoin's the best bet to solve that problem.
When you, I love that breakdown, and I don't know if I watched that video, but this is how Saylor talks about it, right? This is also, what a pity that you weren't able to hold on to that house is also something, right? Like your family home where your forefathers lived and grew up, right? Just conceptually, like just the fact that you are not able to hold on to that for various reasons. But one of the reasons is, the characteristics of the thing itself, right? Like just the fact that if you cannot maintain it, etc. And then even if you choose gold, and you mentioned gold, and I thought like, hey, I thought I saw like a news item last week. Did you know that at the CERN, at the Large Hadron Collider, they actually turned lead into gold for like a millisecond or whatever?
No way.
There's like a lot of articles about it now. Yeah, which is also very interesting, right? Like that's the whole old tale of alchemy and stuff like that. But that's also what Saylor talks about. Like eventually, how do you store wealth for 1,000 years? Like just that idea is so fascinating. Like, how do you provide to your future family by doing something today? Like just that idea, I never thought about something like that until I heard him say that. And maybe to tie it back to something you said earlier, because you mentioned, when you hold Bitcoin, that appreciates in purchasing power. I think many people think that is like a selling. It's like a marketing selling point, but it's rooted in something deeper. Does that make sense? Like because we say it goes up, it will go up, kind of like that, how people could perceive it, that we're just like shilling it. But maybe you could talk about like how you view that, or how you've learned that to be the case, maybe also connected to kind of like the phase of Bitcoin that we're in, and why this is now also the opportunity to project that wealth towards the future.
Well, I think first it would be fun to reflect. It's not fun at all. Yeah, so the property that I grew up on, I first lived in a part of it was like a farmhouse till I was 8, and then we moved into the main house. It's this beautiful farm in North Dorset in the south of the UK, and my father inherited it from his father, and his father inherited it from his father, and I'd say there was probably, and as the eldest son, it was given to me, and there was a whole lot of other parts of the story that I won't mention now, but it does hurt me still to some degree that I don't own that place. And especially now, as a 36-year-old with 3 children hunting for a family home and living the experience of you can't live in a Bitcoin. Like, I'm renting houses. I'm currently in an Airbnb, and I've had to pack up a whole house last week and in storage, like really feeling the pain of not having land for my family. And it's just a fascinating journey to have gone through. I also am in Australia as a British-born migrant. Like, I've essentially decided to move me and my family to another part of the world. And my wife's Australian, and that's what's brought me here in a sense. But it is very sad that we don't own that property as a family any longer. And I guess it taught me a couple of things. Like, one was like the finances that were in place when my father died unexpectedly weren't as strong as what he thought. He just never factored in the idea that he might suddenly die. And that's quite interesting. Like, how much is your real estate yours if the primary earner disappears tomorrow? And that's just a really important question for anyone to ask themselves, like from a kind of, an emotional and safety perspective. Like, this thing that you think is yours might not be tomorrow if something drastic changes. And so it taught me just so many things. Like, life is just complete roller coaster, right? You don't know what's going to happen. Like, literally tomorrow, your dad could be dead. That's what happened. I got a phone call. Jake, you got to come home. Your dad's dead. It's like, fuck. Did not see that coming. But then equally, it is just bricks and mortar. And we did sell it, and we have moved on. And so there's other areas to life that then your attention moves. And this is where it all gets a bit spiritual, to be honest, Bram, because it's like, why did that happen? And what was my father trying to teach me with his early death? And in some ways, I think it is very connected to what I'm now doing, being that I spend more time with my kids than he ever did, because I've been able to, in some ways, lift myself up out of the employment contract that he had with our family business and say, actually, that's not for me. I'm not doing that. Sorry. I want to take my attention and time elsewhere, and I can afford to do that. So yes, I guess it's like, just to rant as a partial answer to your question about, like, it's important for families to really think about like what they own and how well defended they are. And I guarantee you that Bitcoin would be an excellent addition to any physical real estate setup that someone currently has, just as a hedge on any future uncertainty. And that's basically what Bitcoin is, because it increases your time preference. So it lowers your time preference. You're able to think about longer term stuff because you can rely more strongly on your savings account than you ever could before. And so to jump into what you were asking about, like, what does it mean that Bitcoin's purchasing power is increasing over time? Well, first of all, just to define the word purchasing power, that to me is the most undervalued word in the whole world of finance, because what it really reflects is like, how much shit can you buy right now and how much shit can you buy in the future? And if that number of stuff is going down, it means that your wealth is being eroded somehow. And so in an environment where people are selling the same property 3 times in 10 years for higher prices each time, that property has actually got worse because it's been used, right? The door's been scuffed a ton of times. It's been rained on 300 days. There's so many things that mean that real estate is deteriorating in value, yet the price is going up. Why is that? Well, actually what's happening is the denominator, i.e. the dollar, the euro, the pound, is disintegrating in value. And as soon as you see that, it just flips it upside down. You're like, okay, well, hang on. I still own this house 10 years later. How many other houses could I buy if I sell this one? And you quite quickly realize that you can't buy anything nicer than the one you're currently in, right? You're just trading into the same market. Like all these people that think they're getting rich on real estate, again, this is where studying is so important. Go and read How Money Dies. There are a bunch of people in the early 1920s in Germany that thought they were getting rich. And actually, the market was hyperinflating. And that's what's steadily happening all around us all the time. And so to speak specifically for Bitcoin and the price action, there's a few things at play, but to me, the most obvious one is, first of all, technology adoption. And you think about the S-curve. So you've got the early adopters and, think about people walking around with mobile phones that were like the size of a breeze block, right? And they cost thousands of dollars. And now you've got the iPhone 1500 or whatever they've released. That curve of adoption is true for every technology, whether it was the wheel, whether it was mobile phones, and now Bitcoin. We're very, very early. And so if you look at, this is why the startup investing experience is interesting. It's like, okay, you've got a product that's entering a marketplace. Now the marketplace is the market for money. The market for money is the biggest market there is, in my opinion. You can challenge that if you like, but I think that's true. And this is where Croesus's work was so interesting about, okay, let's really think about this. What is the total value of global assets in dollar terms? And there's some spurious bank somewhere, I can't remember who it is, it's either the Bank of International Settlements or some kind of, I don't know who funded them, but like there's a $900 trillion number out there that suggests this is the total global wealth. So, okay, well, you already mentioned that Bitcoin's 2 trillion. So how much of that could it realistically take? And you can start to do a very simple total addressable market calculation. It's like, well, does Bitcoin perform a better job than bonds? Bitcoin perform a better job than real estate? Does Bitcoin perform a better job than the equities market? And that there is like 600-700 million trillion on its own. And the answer is yes. So Bitcoin from a technology adoption perspective is really, really early, but also it has obvious strengths that others don't have. So when I'm looking for something that has the ability to break into a market, is it faster? Is it cheaper? Is it stronger? And I think Bitcoin just kills it on all of these things. Like, how hard is it to open a bank account? 1.4 billion people are unbanked, right? It's really hard to open a bank account. So you can just get online, get a Bitcoin wallet, in you go. So the speed of adoption is faster than the internet. People can send, receive, and store money. That's an absolute game changer for a huge amount of people. You think, okay, so we're super early in the adoption cycle. There's this huge market that it could potentially break into. And that's where these numbers get completely insane. But if you did that calc backwards, you can say, okay, 21 million coins divided by, let's say it takes a 10% market share of total wealth globally, and suddenly you've got millions of dollars of Bitcoin. The first target I would look at, to be honest, is the gold market. So what's gold's total value today? I think it's probably like 20 trillion, 22 trillion. It's run a bit recently.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 10x upside from here to take on gold. And I think that has always been, in my opinion, like the first hurdle. But then you look at the likes of the Lightning Network, then you look at like Cashew, then you look at eCash, then you look at Fedi. Like, people are building layers on top of Bitcoin that act as payments networks that are uncensorable, and it's already happening. Like, I had Diana on from Bitcoin Indonesia recently talking about how they're using Fedi in Indonesia to get around the local banking laws. Like, it's absolutely already happening. And so Bitcoin's going to shred not just gold, because it's a 10x on gold, and it's going to take on MasterCard and Visa and all these other centralized platforms that just won't be able to compete because of the network effect of Bitcoin. I think I've probably been ranting for about 10 minutes now, Bram, so you've done well to keep up with me, mate. But I'll leave it there. But I couldn't be more bullish on Bitcoin.
If you want to self-custody your Bitcoin stack, I recommend the Blockstream Jade Plus. I've been using this premium Bitcoin-only hardware wallet for a few months now, and I love its design and ease of use. What makes it stand out is its open source hardware and software, and Blockstream's unique genuine check, which makes sure that your device is authentic. No backdoors or compromises. You can connect with the Jade Plus however you want: Bluetooth, USB-C, or you can go fully air-gapped with its built-in camera for cable-free QR transactions. The metal case feels solid and the color screen is easy to read, and it connects with your favorite Bitcoin apps like Blockstream Green, Sparrow, and Electrum. Get your Jade Plus today at store.blockstream.com and use code BRAM to get 10% of your entire order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with StampSeed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, StampSeed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from StampSeed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with StampSeed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. I think it's great how you elaborated that. I think the core of it, why I wanted to touch upon it, is that, and you mentioned it, right? Why does the price, or rather, I'd say exchange rate of Bitcoin, why does that go up? Why are more people moving their economic value towards Bitcoin is because they are seeing, like you explained, that the solutions that they're using now are actually not gaining in value, right? Like you said, real estate. Like, real estate has become a way for people. It's like real estate has become an investable asset instead of just being a utility,
Shelter.
you know. Exactly, shelter. And some homes are obviously investable because they are on special locations, or maybe are created by some sort of architect or whatever. Like, that's that appeals to a certain set of people, but that doesn't mean you can use that as a way to trade, right? But many people are using real estate investments now as a way to protect their wealth, because you can simply not save anymore, right? So if you just save, or like you said, after an inheritance, you have some money, like, what do I do with it? Like, should I let it sit? Like, that's the dumbest thing you could ever do. I think most people actually know that right now, right? And it's true, but all the solutions that are sold to you in whatever way, whether it's a wealth manager, right, or a financial advisor, or whoever, your bank,
Trust me, bro.
yeah, right. Like I can help you do that. Well, it doesn't matter what they do. Because the thing they are using, the money, is constantly losing its value. And like you said, and this is what Seb Bunny told me, and you know him too, right? He told me, you should realize that all the money you have right now is worth the most today. So tomorrow it's worth less. So you can buy less shit, like you said, right? So that's why people are urged to do something today. That's why, eventually they are looking for other ways to store value, right? That's the overview of Croesus of Jesse Myers. And why is Bitcoin's exchange rate going up is because once you do the research of all the things that you can use as a store of value, including Bitcoin, if you do the right research, you'll figure out that Bitcoin is the most superior savings technology that you can adopt. Slowly but surely, more people are figuring that out. They're selling real estate. I just this morning I met my friend who was big in real estate, and he sold a lot a few years ago and everything in Bitcoin. He still has friends in real estate, and they are like, when Bitcoin goes down, they're like, oh, you're a sucker, blah, blah. When it goes up, he's the king, But he always tells them, Bitcoin never calls me about a leaking roof or a faucet or squatters or a fire or whatever, right? Like, I don't have all that stuff. I can take my wealth with me. You can take, how do you say that? Like a registry form that says like you own this and this property, but it has no value when you go to another country and say like, well, in this random town in this other country, I own this and this plot, and
try to take your house with you. Like, forget it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I actually told this to him this morning. Yeah. And I told it to him this morning, and it's funny that it comes up here because yesterday I was looking at renting another home. And so I was looking at like different homes. And at one point, I was looking at a home that was too expensive for me, but I was going through the pictures and I was like, this home is like, moi. Like it's not even like that. It's not fancy enough for what they're asking. And then I realized, holy shit, like there's people that own this home that have this ugly kitchen and this ugly bathroom, right? And then I saw a window frame that was a little bit broken or something. And then I was thinking about what you said, counterparty risk. You don't really own the thing, and it has like all these liabilities, basically. And then I started thinking about, okay, the past few years in this home, how much money have I paid, the person that owns this home? Well, that is X amount. Almost half of that amount has been spent on stuff that broke along the way or was due to be replaced. And then eventually when I did like the calculations, a little bit napkin math, like after tax, horrible return for this guy. Like not an income or something, maybe it's enough for him to pay off whatever is left of the mortgage or something. But it's kind of like I'm sitting in this house. I'm like babysitting the house. He hopes I keep it neat, and that's the pension for his family or for his kids or whatever. And I'm in there, right? It's just so, it hit me when I thought like, that's a weird thought. Like, why would you do that? Why would you outsource the usage of something that has value that you want to retain towards the future to eventually give to your kids, right? Or maybe have your own pension from it when you sell it or whatever. It sounds very, very risky. I don't know. Now I'm ranting, but I hope that makes sense. Like it's just interesting to think that in Bitcoin,
real estate's the one I struggle with the most, to be honest.
Yeah,
because I need a house. I need somewhere to live.
Of course.
But what I see on the market, it's not value. I don't see value in this stuff. In fact, I go as far as saying the word luxury doesn't mean that any longer. So you'll find adverts for a luxury property, and you'll look at it and be like, well, that's just a cheap renovation.
It's just only because it's expensive too, right? Like the perception of
it's because they've whacked a big price on it and it's in a certain neighborhood. They think they can call it luxury. It's like, that's a very simple beach house near Byron Bay, Australia. Like, that hasn't really had any money spent on it like for a long time, and it's apparently a luxury getaway. Like, no, that's just a normal house. But honestly, I think that the entire real estate market is in a state of like myopic trance. Like they actually think it is, right? And so you can go through I've been looking at buying some land. The amount of adverts on realestate.com.au that I've looked at, which start with like breathtaking or glorious or once in a lifetime opportunity. You're like, well, hang on a second. I've read the same once in a lifetime like trope 15 times in the last 2 weeks. That's just not true, because there's all these other places you could potentially buy. But I think it's that return
if you
profile.
Have to sorry to interrupt, but if you have to sell it that badly, why did someone leave?
Yeah, why are you selling it? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the most amazing place to build a home or do. It's funny. Like if it has to be sold to you like that, then is it actually a good thing? And that's what I love about Bitcoin, is that no one has to believe us on what we think about Bitcoin. Like you can actually verify it for yourself and put it next to all these other assets, and then decide for yourself if this is actually, the asymmetric opportunity of your lifetime to buy, versus perhaps the land where some random realtor typed in some words.
But also it's that fact that this is a good one, because Bitcoin doesn't care what your opinion is. In fact, Bitcoiners actually don't care what your opinion is. At the end of the day, it is an opt-in or opt-out system. So if you choose not to get involved, that's on you. And let's just see how the cookie crumbles, right? This is capitalism. If I put my entire inheritance into this thing and it turns out that I'm wrong, well, who's the joke on? It's on me, right? It's my fucking problem, and it's my serious issue to try and fix, if that ever was the case. And that's what's so interesting about it, isn't it? It's like people are so happy to sit there and judge and observe and tell you why you're wrong. But it's like, well, just let me go. Let me just try my thing, see what happens. And if I'm wrong, then, well done you. But it's me that pays the price. And equally, that flip side is that it's like, we just got to let it go. If people don't want to come, that's fine. Give another 5 years and then see.
Well, two things there. I think if you hate Bitcoin, post your shorts or shut the fuck up. I'm putting my money where
ask
my
a man
mouth
what
is.
he owns, not what he thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. What you're shorting Bitcoin, are you?
Yeah, so it's so stupid. Like I'm such an idiot that I'm into Bitcoin. Please prove me wrong. Like post your massive short position, right? I love that, and I also love what you said. Like Bitcoin doesn't care. Like that is the entire almost profound thing of Bitcoin. It's like a clock that keeps ticking. It's just a thing that keeps on chugging along, one block at a time. At every 10 minutes, the block gets added. That's the truth of this system. Anyone can verify that. Like it's just doing that anyway. You can adopt that crazy new financial or crazy new system for money. Or not. Like it doesn't really, like you said, like it doesn't really matter. It's not like it has to be sold to you, like that house or that plot has to be sold to you. And I think that's also interesting. If you think about the use case of Bitcoin, just I don't know how long the selling that house in the UK took, but you have to find the right person. Yeah, right?
Yeah, there's a whole marketing process. Well, first there was the emotional process of figuring out, actually, this is probably the right decision. And then, you've got to tell people that that's what you're doing. And that has impacts as well. And then you've got to market the whole thing. And in this case, it's a very specific buyer that had to be found. And it was all done in the end. And, but it's not, there's no liquidity. Like you're searching for a needle in a haystack. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. And like we could sell a Bitcoin right now to a random person in a random location, and we don't even have to know who that is or where they're from.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. One thing, Bram, that's coming to mind is that, so people out there, like, let's take real estate as the example. So, okay, so you live in a house, you bought it, you paid the 25% deposit, you've got a 75% mortgage. Most mortgage rates have rapidly increased in the last couple of years across the world as the Fed put their money up. It's like, okay, well, everyone's going to lockstep with that. And before you know it, your interest rate of 2.5% or whatever the retail market's paying is now 6, 7, 8%. Wow, well, those monthly payments for the house you supposedly own have just become quite a lot more expensive. Can you justify them? Do you own your own home when actually 75% of the property is a lien to a mortgage business? And suddenly it looks a lot more dicey, right? And what I then think is interesting to do is putting aside that interest rate discussion and how people leverage in the housing market. It's also like, just for a thought exercise, we're coming back to that purchasing power concept. Start measuring stuff in different things. So like, go and measure some assets in the FTSE 100. Just map it against the UK's leading stock index, or the ASX here in Australia, or whatever, or map it against gold. Like, how has your real estate performed against the price of gold, and take a time frame and compare it. Start looking at these things, because when you change the denominator that you're measuring value in, you start to see a very different picture. And for example, like, people talk a lot in the investment space about global liquidity. And what that really means is, what is the total amount of additional currency that's being thrown into the marketplace through debt, or whatever they want to call it, such as stimulus, quantitative easing, some kind of fiscal policy, or monetary policy. And you'll find that a lot of these stock markets, a lot of these real estate prices, they're actually just tracking the total amount of money in the system. And so there are macro investors out there that will look at liquidity, and they'll look at the increasing of interest rates as like a lower period of liquidity, and then they're going to see them drop down again, which is happening in the very, very near future for us, I believe. And asset prices just start running. And you're like, okay, what's really going on here is not additional value. It's just more money floating around the system. And so real estate's the best one to do this with, in a way, because it's so physical. It's like, hang on, that house just sold for X many million, and it sold a couple of years ago for that many million. So why is the price changed? And if you measured it in gold, I would argue that the price change would look very, very different. And so someone out there that might be listening, just play this game. Like, start measuring your stuff in gold. How many ounces or fraction of the ounce does it cost to buy this stuff? And yeah, that it's not something that you ever do, right? Like, you at least in my case, I was born with pounds, went to a schooling system. Like, pounds were just, that's the money you use. There's no question mark over it. It works. It's not a problem. You just, that's what you get paid in. That's what you invest with. That's what you're going to get, back into your bank account when you exit a business or whatever. And you never think about what would those prices have been like had I kept it in gold. And yeah, the truth is, once you start to map it against different stuff, you'll realize that actually the price appreciation that you think you're seeing is a mirage. It's not real. And that's actually pretty depressing, to be honest. Like, when I look at if I calculate, as I do now, every week, I now have a habit with my wife that I've developed, where I calculate all of my investments every Friday night, and I share it with her on a spreadsheet that I've got, like, tracking, like, this is exactly what we own and where it is. And the truth is, the dollar figure is not dissimilar to 10 years ago. But when I when I bring in inflation, that's actually, in real purchasing power, a lot less. Now, I've taken lots of risk in the last 10 years by quitting my fiat contract and career that I had, and betting on myself and trying to start businesses and investing in things, and your expenses have gone up. And that's one of the reasons why that net asset total is come down. But it's still, hang on, 40% more dollars were printed. So when you really look at this, my purchasing power has been eroded by 40%. Shit, that's really bad. I can buy 40% less stuff, and I hadn't even realized. And I'm someone who thinks about this a lot. And that's what really pisses me off. It's like, no one's even looking at the right fucking stuff. Like, come on.
So even if you're like into it, maybe
you
even
still don't see
forcibly.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you still, I have these thoughts when, trading gets halted on a certain stock, right? Or like a few weeks ago with the whole Japan stuff blow up, and I think it was South Korea or Japan, like shorting certain stocks wasn't allowed anymore. So you're like playing a game,
can't play the game any longer.
and yeah. But this about the homes, right? I was looking this up because I've made comparisons in home prices in my country. I actually first saw like another tweet. The price, so not the value, of your home goes up because your government devalues the currency you are forced to use, and everything is priced in, only to tax you more on the price increase of your home. Think about that.
Yeah,
That's
well,
wild.
that's a nice little like flywheel of revenue for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention the fact that their fixed dollar term debt is being eroded as well.
Yes. And I looked up this tweet. So I did this. I should update it because I did it from November 2012. Or maybe that's not even fair, but because, Bitcoin. So let's do 2016. The average Bitcoin price in November 2016 was 913 euros. And the average home selling price that month in euros was 246,000 euros. So the average home selling price in Bitcoin was 270 Bitcoin. In November 2024, so 8 years later, the price of Bitcoin was 81,466 euros. The average home selling price was 461,931 euros. And in Bitcoin, it was 5.6 Bitcoin. In price, then I don't know exactly between these 8 years, but like from 2012, I'll do 2012, it went up like, I don't know, a gazillion %, right? From €6 to 81,000 euros. The average home price went up 109%. The average home price in Bitcoin went down by 99.9%. If I do this today, it's even lower than 5.6 Bitcoin per home. I think it's just under 5 in my country. Well, maybe 5, right? So I think that's what you were saying. Like if you start denominating, and I think that's also why it's interesting to not call the Bitcoin price the price, but it's rather the exchange rate. How many dollar, pound, euro units do you need to buy one Bitcoin unit, right? A few years ago, you needed, well, only 6 euro units to buy one Bitcoin unit. Today, you need like 90K plus euro units to buy one Bitcoin unit. Ask yourself, what is the stronger money? Because that's what we talked about before, right? Like people are looking for a replacement of the money they are forced to use, the fiat money, because that's losing value. But if those units are losing value, but there's like another type of new money that's actually increasing in purchasing power, you should move towards that. And what I've also learned along the way, which I think could help other people, is just realize that this has happened before. Like this is not anything new, right? Like the whole idea of people moving towards the best money is very, very old and logical also. And you have like examples in like the Canadian American like border area where Canadian shops accept US dollars, but they give back Canadian dollars in return because that's the weaker one. They'd rather have American dollars than Canadian dollars. And that's logical because like you said in the beginning, eventually you earn money to buy time, to lower your uncertainty towards the future, right? To create what is called capital that you can later deploy at whatever time you want. But if you're constantly forced to consume and give away that money because it's losing value, you are also not working towards the future, right? You're more a consumer and less of a builder. And even trying to become a builder or being a builder, for which you need time and space to create whatever you want to create, that just becomes harder and harder for people in general. And so I think it's interesting when you look at things denominated in Bitcoin, how that's becoming cheaper. You need less units of Bitcoin to buy the same thing. And you need more units of fiat dollar, pounds to buy that same thing. Like just that is already a huge signal, similar to the signal of just looking at Greg Foss, like what we talked about. Maybe that's an interesting question for you. Like, are there any moments along the way that you can now think about in your understanding of Bitcoin where you were really like, damn, okay, like this is it. Like what you said about, what you saw with Michael Saylor. Like I can't imagine that was the only thing.
No. What's springing to mind is to stick with the real estate example. So I used to be a real estate investor. And the truth is I had a very, very bad return. So I lost a lot of money. And there's a great book. If you haven't read it, check it out. It's, I think, 100 or so years old. It's called Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. And it's about an American trader who rises to eminence in New York. And there's lots of lessons in there. It's a quite famous investing book. But one of them is like, your first biggest loss is your biggest lesson. And I'd really, really caught the Bitcoin bug, such that it's like, how do I get more Bitcoin? And when I was sitting down and looking at my net assets and thinking about, okay, well, what is actually realistically liquid and what could I dispose of in order to purchase more Bitcoin? The obvious thing is like, well, I own this real estate. Like, what do I want to do about it? And the price, or let's say the valuation that I had on my own balance sheet for this real estate was a certain number. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just get rid of it. And I'll get rid of the debt at the same time, so I won't have to be carrying any mortgage payments. And I went to sell them, and the market's like, no interest. The first place I'm thinking of in particular is like, sold it. I sold it with a 5% discount on what I paid for it 8 years before. Wow. And I'd spent 20% more doing a renovation on it to add an additional bathroom. It's an apartment in London. So absolute howler of an investment, right? 8-year hold, and my equity position was chopped in half. And there was a second property that I owned that there was some problems with the external surface of the building. Therefore, no one could get new finance on any of the properties in it. And therefore, to sell, you had to sell at a discount. So I was sitting there and I had paper losses. And it's like, do you stick or twist? Like, do you sit here and hope that the real estate market is going to recover to some extent so you can like get out what you originally put in? Or do you cut your losses and reallocate into this other new thing that, yes, has upside, but also like, you know, a lot of people would say you're absolutely insane to sell real estate and buy Bitcoin, right? Because real estate historically has been a great bet. And it took me, honestly, like probably 2 years to get this all sorted out. Because I spent 12 months arguing with different real estate agents who would give me a price, go and try and sell it, come back with nothing even close, being like, what the fuck? Get me the price you told me you were going to get me. And eventually you're just like chasing the market down till eventually, so I was like, okay, had to fess up to my missus that actually we weren't as wealthy as we thought. And I had to take a loss. And that was a big moment in my experience of managing an inheritance, because this money comes to you, you didn't earn it, but you know how fucking hard the people that did.
Yeah, you don't want to lose it, right?
You do not want to lose it. Do not fuck it up, boy. And of that particular investment, I lost 50% of what I put in. Absolute howler. But it's like, okay, you have to play the best cards that you have available to you. And it's like, I see an opportunity that I cannot unsee this thing. And I'm going to back myself and I'm going to back this decision. And so now, and this is why I think Bitcoin podcasts like this are so valuable, is share this experience. So wind the clock back 5 years, and my allocation to Bitcoin was like in the single digit percentages as a total of my portfolio, maybe like 1 or 2%. And then it becomes 5%. Then it's become 10%. And now it's more like 80%. And a lot of that's also because of the cost that I had, or like my investment entry point, as Larry would call it. I've hit a 5-bagger, right? It's 5 times more valuable in dollar terms than what I paid for it. Believable, touch wood, return in a relatively short time frame of like maybe 900, 1,000 days. This is an insane piece of investing that I'm incredibly proud of, but also like it's just reality. And so if you're willing to take the risk, if you're willing to understand what you're buying, if you're willing to back yourself, these are some of the benefits that come out of it, out the other side. And it's not Bitcoin that's changed. This is what Bitcoin does. It just stores value better than anything else out there. It's me that's changed. And I've effectively grown into myself much more so than before, because I took that decision. I said, no, I'm going to take this old pool of capital that I've not managed very well to date because I've made mistakes, and I'm going to learn from those mistakes. I'm going to put it into this new thing, and then it's just flown. Now, admittedly, that took a number of years for it to really, pick up the pace. And right now, like, we're back through the 100K, and it's like normal. It's like, cool, whatever. Last time around when we popped over 100K US dollars, everyone's like, woo, we've made it to 100, like, really getting excited about it. Whereas now it's like, oh, cool, whatever. Didn't even really notice. And it's going to cruise again. So yeah, specific stories. Basically, when you're sitting there looking at Bitcoin thinking, should I? Like, everyone's been there. And I took the jump, made the leap. And now on the other side of like, okay, well, now I'm thinking about maybe selling some. Should I do that? If you sell it, what are you buying? And to your point, I'm not buying a luxury, fucking house that's completely overpriced that some dick's lived in for 10 years and thinks can sell it to some other mug. Like, no.
Yeah. I love that. I think that will play out over time, definitely. The other thing, like, over 100K. My thought was like, yeah, of course it's over 100K. I know I'm right about this, duh. But I think that's funny. Like, there's a continuous play with yourself or your ego, just kind of like challenging. Yeah, can I still trust myself? Can I still trust my judgment? Can I still trust the work that I did? And I think it's nice you touch upon that, because the decision to get into Bitcoin, to become more sovereign with your wealth, is like a super sovereign decision as well. Like, it's really all you. It's you, right? So even that we talked about, like, okay, I saw this guy who says, like, I'm 35 years in the risk chair, and I think, well, sounds great what he's saying. I'm just gonna follow that. All on me. Like, I cannot. Yeah, now I can point to him because it worked out well, right? But it would be very embarrassing if it didn't work out, and I would point to him. People would say, like, why do you listen to another person? You know what I mean? So it's everything is on me.
Just been jailed for over 10 years for the Celsius debacle, right? And he was out there telling everyone, just trust me, bro. So you're right. Like, well, yes. On its own,
but you have to do the
right way
to
make a decision.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's really like on me. Everything is on me. But you just said, like, take the risk. What do you mean with take the risk? What do you think about? Like, what does that mean for you when you say that? Like, how it sounds, how I translate it is like, take the risk of betting on yourself, like you've never done before, right? Because this is to finish the thought. This is like the financial decision that you could make by absolutely verifying it totally for yourself. Almost the only decision ever in life, perhaps. I don't even know. Maybe that's too big, but like, you can actually do it. Like, all the tools are there for you to verify it for yourself. And maybe that is a risk, or what we perceive as a risk. Like, can I actually fully decide this myself, like, without any abstractions, without any financial advisor, without any bank telling me do this, or without any advertiser for real estate saying, like, oh, this amazing 3-bedroom, blah, 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 fungus infected, thing is still a great buy. Like, this is truly something that you can verify for yourself. And I think that is a scary thing in the paradigm that we live in, where everything is abstracted. Like, you need third parties everywhere to verify anything, or to get permission for anything, So yeah, little ramble, but like, what do you think about risk? Or what do you mean when you say, like, take the risk?
I think that your translation of it's actually very astute, and it's me backing myself. So there is no lender of last resort, right? There's no concept of moral hazard here. It's like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. Okay, well, I'll take that on the chin. I'll be like, okay, I'm wrong. And that would be okay, right? I think it's hard to say, really, but the idea that, like, it's on me, it transpires characteristic trait that Bitcoin inspires. It pulls it out of you, this idea of like responsibility, accountability, ownership. Like not just the fact that Bitcoin represents the best form of property rights that man's ever had access to. For the first time, you can actually own something that can't be taken off you. You can have it in such a small size that anyone can access the market. You can send it to anyone else at any time, and it can't be debased on the back end. Unbelievable innovation, like unbelievable. And so that helps you see it for what it is. Like, actually, hang on, I can take ownership for this thing. I can take control. And so this idea of like being your own bank, like that's what Bitcoin is. And actually, none of us really understand what banks are in many ways. Like banks are just creating IOUs for their buddies and celebrating as fast as they can, whilst we apparently don't realize. Like, no, that game is over. I choose a fixed monetary supply. I choose Bitcoin. You can't take it off me and you can't debase it. That's actually a far, far better system to build economic prosperity and a long-term vision on top of. And so this idea of like, oh, it's on me. The flip side to that is like, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to hire a financial advisor who's going to like hold my little hand and be like, don't worry, guys, got your back. You know, if we build a relationship over the next 10 years, I'll sort you right out. And these are the same characters that when you go into a meeting with them, you say, have we increased purchasing power this year? They're like, what?
Yeah.
And they know exactly what you mean, but they don't want to answer the question. And it's like, okay, who's this meeting for? Me and what I need looking after, or you and your business? And it's all bullshit.
A trick that has helped me in thinking about this is, have these people figured out something just in general in life that you haven't, right? So, okay, I'm outsourcing the preservation of my wealth, however much that is. Again, that doesn't really matter. I'm going to outsource that to another person who also has their own life with their own struggles and their own problems and needs and wants and ego and all these things. Maybe they hate their job, but they are nice to you because they have to do their job, right? They're having the meeting with you to show the results because that is part of the service that they deliver. So just ask yourself when you're in a situation like that, right? Or maybe people have a real estate portfolio and there's like other people that manage that, right? Or even the tenants are managing the quality of the real estate in your portfolio, if you think about it like that.
Yes. Yeah, the very important part of it. Yeah.
Is that something you want? Are you okay with outsourcing that responsibility to these other people that, and this was my trick, that are no more interested in your individual life than you are? By definition, they are less interested in your personal life. So if you make the decision to defer a certain responsibility around the wealth preservation, however you want to define it, literally the financial advisor, or even the tenants, or even, some real estate maintenance company, whatever. Is that something I want to do? Did I make that decision in a conscious way? What are like the risks involved there? And I think what many people do, and I mean, I did the same, is just do what other people do, right? Without thinking and not realizing that. Yeah, I think like you said in a great way, like you pissed some capital away by not understanding what you were doing. Absolutely. And maybe you need that along the way to be like, what am I actually doing? Think about that. Like, what am I doing? Do I understand what I'm doing? And if I don't, what do I actually think about that? You know what I mean? Like, is that something that, I don't know, do you feel shame or guilt or anger or whatever? It doesn't really matter. Like, what does that trigger in me? And I think there's multiple of these kind of like crossroad moments when you, I don't know, either go to the grocery store, get some simple dinner, and you have to pay like 40 euros or 50 pounds or $100, that you're like, that's a lot. Is that okay? Like, is that okay?
What's in this bag of shopping? Some gold bullion.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like, holy shit. But you know what I mean? Like, it's recognizing these moments and having a moment of like, Do I know what I'm doing? And I've shared that many times before about myself when I had a conversation with a colleague when I worked at a bank that I walked away and was like, I'm an idiot. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And I'm interested in this stuff. I work at a bank. What the hell? And I have no clue. Like, I feel like an idiot. That was a big moment for me. And I think that could be different for anyone. But for me, those moments have been interesting signals along the way where I took some time and was just like, okay, why am I fucking up? Why is this not working? Like it was sold to me. I think that's also something, right? Like, oh yeah, if you use this or that wealth manager, yeah, our past performance is blah blah blah. Oh yeah, sure, that's great. Or again, the nice plot of land, which is going to be great for developing real estate. Or
once in a lifetime, baby. Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, is it really? Are you? Do you have enough courage to ask yourself that question? I think that is it. I do think that's easier to look back on, by the way, and say that now. Like in that moment, I didn't see it like that.
Well, Bram, I know that you're onto this already. Like you have felt it in yourself and you've studied it in other people, which is this idea of the self-actualization journey of Bitcoin and how thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and very simple, you've got to eat, you've got to drink, and then actually you need somewhere to live, then you need some clothes. And the higher up that ladder of needs that you get, the more, in some ways, like the higher level of consciousness you're able to achieve. And with that, your lifestyle might change. Like I've got my time back. It's absolutely extraordinary what happens. But I think that on that journey, which is a fairly gradual one, and really like it's now 2025, May, I first bought Bitcoin in December 2015. It's 9.5 years I've owned this stuff for. And it's taken almost a decade to get to this point, even though the first 5, I didn't really know what I was looking at. But I think then, just to speak very specifically about the investment part of this, you're like, hang on a second, guys. So on the one hand, I'm walking into a meeting with a wealth manager who's telling me that they can't beat inflation. But on the other, I've just seen a NASDAQ-listed company take Bitcoin onto its balance sheet. And that's information arbitrage. It's like,
yes,
okay, who do I believe? Right? And it's like, if I can't find someone who's going to manage my capital effectively, then I have to do it myself. And the incredibly empowering part of that is as you take back control, it's like, right, okay, look, we're done here. Sell everything, send it to this bank account. Thanks very much. Then you've got to go through all of the hoops of like signing up with the crypto exchange, giving them driver's license and proof of funds and all this crazy stuff. There's quite a treacherous path in many ways to like Bitcoin self-custody with an inheritance plan, but it's possible. And when you get there, what I've found is this deep sense of calm. And then Bitcoin just does its thing on the back end. You're like, here we go. But it's that initial state of obvious information arbitrage that you're like, information doesn't travel fairly through markets. Very, very simple. It's like what you spoke about before. Like the information's out there, you just got to go and find it. And there still is, in my opinion, like hardcore Bitcoin maximalists that have put their entire life savings into it in size globally remains a very, very small amount of people. I don't know what that number is, but it's pretty tiny, I reckon. And
I have a number. I wonder what your number is.
Like it's so hard to, great question. You're going to pin me down. Okay. 10 million.
Really? Okay. No, I'm at 100,000.
Really?
I have a friend, Richard Byworth, who says 10,000. Actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I like the barometer. There was a nice one.
Because I was also thinking, like, I went to the Melbourne Cricket Ground. Sorry to jump in, Bram, but there's like 100,000 people in there. You're like, well, it's probably more than that. But yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. I mean, who knows, right? And we'll never know. We'll never know who controls all of those Bitcoin wallets. And that's the beauty of the anonymity of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's that idea, like, the information's out there if you choose to go and find it, but the information doesn't spread fairly. And that's okay. We're just incredibly lucky to join the dots earlier than most people. And so, well, anyway, I love these conversations because in many ways you're a decision-making center, self-incentivized to benefit you and those closest to you, i.e. wife and children. But you're really doing it in a vacuum. Like, I don't have anyone in my very close physical sense that would talk to me about any of this stuff. And then within my own family, I'm clearly thinking very differently to other members of it. Like my wider family, my siblings, etc. And that's why I end up on Bitcoin podcasts with people like yourself, Bram, because we're pushed to the fringes of the internet in a sense to find other people that tell me I'm wrong somehow. If I'm wrong, I'm listening. Please tell me. And I'm going to touch wood. Thus far, I haven't found a reasonable argument that scares me in the slightest.
Similar, and I want to hear them because I don't want to make the wrong decision. But this, up until now, has been the best and most rational decision that I think I've ever made in my life. So, I mean, I'm going to keep going until how do you say? Yeah, until I've heard counter arguments that would make me change my mind on it. But yeah, this is also where I'm at right now. And I agree. I feel incredibly lucky and grateful to have figured it out to a degree that I'm confident enough to spend also more time and energy on it, right? But yeah, it remains an experiment also, I'd say, right? I've always seen Bitcoin as it's either zero or it's really the measurement of all value in the world, the black hole of value, however you want to call that. I don't really see a middle way where Bitcoin ends. So that's going to be interesting. I was thinking, for wrapping up, I like how you talked about, and I don't know the exact words you used, but something like working on yourself, the self-actualization. How do you look back at that? Because you said okay, in the beginning we talked about how you've changed. How has adopting Bitcoin helped you in making decisions on other subjects too? Have you become better at that, do you think?
Better is probably not the right word, and nothing is necessarily right or wrong. Well, I mean, and this is a key theme in the podcast I launched this year, which is that Bitcoin solves the money problem. And if Bitcoin solves the money problem, well, it solves your money problems. But there's not just money problems in the world, right? There's lots of other areas that you will need to figure things out. So I've, as I guess part of the journey, come across a really fascinating book that talks a lot more about the investment you can make in humanistic and intellectual capital, and that those are actually the key drivers for financial health. And to briefly break those down, humanistic is essentially people, having children. And, how do you store wealth over time is essentially the problem it's talking about. And there's a very common concept of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. So someone starts with nothing, scrappy entrepreneur, builds a business, coaches their son takes it on, and fully in the philosophy of the founder, builds it to some beast. And then number 3 comes along, has no idea what it feels like to have nothing, and basically pisses the whole thing away. And it happens all the time. So how do you solve that problem? And how I now think of it is basically you have to invest in your family, right? Having, in my case, deciding to get married, making the plunge, going okay, yeah, this is a relationship I want to have, and then making the decision to have children together. I feel insanely blessed to have been able to do that. But in reflection, those are the future engine rooms of the wealth package, right? And it's not just wealth in terms of finances. That only comes if you have the humanistic capital in the first place. And so it's about investing into that. And then the intellectual side of that is what do you know? So can you like restudy? Can you learn new things? Can you, get a mentor of some form? Or like, how do you get a better body or get a better mindset? And these are basically problems that are only apparent as you've solved more basic needs. So the fact is, I'm not on an employment contract for a fiat salary and bonus, which I used to be on as a broker in the past, which basically takes your entire life. So from, whatever it was, 8 a.m. on a Monday until Friday, 7 p.m., you're on a mobile phone, you might be on business trips, you're out, wining and dining clients. And it's not that that's bad. That's absolutely like a reasonable way to earn a living. But because of my unique situation, I've been able to basically solve the money problem with Bitcoin. So I've regained the ability to control my time. And so therefore I'm able to think about some of these other problems that are like higher up the hierarchy of self-actualization. And that means there's an infinite thing that you can look at, right? Some areas that I've really enjoyed digging into are without doubt around spirituality. Like, what is consciousness? How can you benefit from meditation? What does it mean to sit down and say, okay, here is my 10-year, like, this is the future me, and setting a self-image and defining your ethics. What are my values? And really, like, it's personal development work that I didn't even know existed, right? And what's fun is you start to get this feeling that opportunities don't just arise, but you're able to sift through the ones that fit with this future you. And it's a whole new philosophy for making decisions. And that to me is like why this is so exciting. So Bitcoin basically takes away your attention. So there's nothing more scarce than Bitcoin than human attention. And your attention, or at least my attention, was previously focused on a whole load of things that were derived from the money problem. Whereas it's like, hang on, now you'd be able to solve that problem to some degree. It's like, okay, what are my annual expenses? How long does this pot of wealth last based against those expenses? Okay, I've got a runway of X, Y, Z, and I think that capital growth position is going to do, X, Y, Z. So you can start to map into the future. Well, when do I actually need to sell my time for money in order to survive and feed my family? As I mentioned before, one of the big scenarios I'm trying to figure out is like, you can't live in a Bitcoin. So I'm sitting on what I think is the best investment ever available to mankind. But like, what if you're going to sell it? What are you selling for? Well, selling some as like a little like percentage off the top from time to time to cover your expenses and not have to work for someone else, that to me is very, very valuable. So I'm like, cool, that makes sense. But then it's like, I'm not buying someone's luxury house, as we've discussed, because that doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on how I've been able to start investigating previous mindsets that were actually very damaging. The concept of struggling with abandonment and how that actually like manifests in behavior, and just a whole heap of areas that I've started to peel back the layers on as I have investigated myself. I think just to summarize it, Bram, would be, if you want to fix the world around you, first you've got to fix yourself. And so what Bitcoin's given me the ability to do, or should I say solving the money problem, has given me the time and space to really start working on myself that wouldn't have been possible had I, stuck with my previous career choices and investment philosophy. And for that, I'm extraordinarily grateful. And I really now strongly believe that Bitcoiners are a petri dish of the future world. And the mindset of some of these, and I'm talking about specifically men in this instance, that have made financial decisions to adopt Bitcoin, have started working on their mindset, started working on their body, started thinking about like the primary means of production. Like, how do we create shit? Like the idea of a citadel, slightly withdrawing from the mainstream perhaps, but like, these are people that want to get up and fight because they're like, this is mad what is going on. Absolutely mad. What the amount of theft on a global scale that has been allowed to get away with thus far, it's going to end. And it's going to end in, hopefully, I think, a seemingly quite peaceful revolution where we just change the money. And it makes me very, very hopeful for the future.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's also why it's so hard, right? Like, could that actually be the solution? You just leave the money that is being forced upon you. So eventually your time and energy that you store in it, because you get it as a reward for spending your time and energy, and your product, which is your productivity on whatever you do, working. If you just stop using that as a technology to save your time and energy, your economic energy, then that is just it. That is it. Like you can, if you want to change the world, first your own world and then the rest, there's now a tool to actually do that, but you have to do it. Like just talking about it or protesting or saying like boo-hoo, like that there's actually a way simpler thing that you can do, which I find profoundly interesting. And that is just adopting other money. That's just it. And I like what you said, like you're taking the incentives away from that money if you leave it to be what is eventually an abusive tool that isn't even used because people want to use it. It's not even launched in a free market where people can decide like this is the money I use. So I agree, and I think that is definitely a conversation we should have. So please come back.
Yeah, we will, Bram. We will. Thank you for having me.
We will, of course, man. Yeah, I'm looking at the time, so I kind of want to wrap up because I know, like 90 minutes for many people is already very long. So I hope there's still people that stuck around.
They get this far. Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to ask you the last question, and I ask everyone the same question, and I think you're also a great person to ask this, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go of?
Freedom. Interestingly, though, what I think of as freedom is changing. But see, I did touch on the personal development work. I was asked to write down my 5 most important values, and I've rehashed it and done it differently, tons of different times, and just always freedom is in there. And what I think of freedom, I guess what's amusing is I happily pay capital gains tax, income tax, GST, because I think I'm free, but like actually am I? If that makes sense. We're born into these societies where we use these monies that we think are just normal, but hang on a second, how's the government funding itself? Hang on a second, when I get a paycheck, who am I giving this money to? Hang on a second, when I make a good investment, why are they taking that? And hang on a second, what's going on here? And I think the very concept of freedom, it's like the concept of luxury, right? Like luxury doesn't mean luxury, and freedom in many ways doesn't mean freedom. So I think caveat this with, I'm learning fast and it's altering over time, but one of my goals is essentially to have the freedom to go where I want when I want, to spend what I want when I want, and to work on what I want when I want. And that to me is one of the most epic places you could ever be.
Love that, man. I think that's a great ender. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and your insights. Appreciate you. And let's do it again, man.
Well, and I'd just like to say to you, congratulations on the growth of Bitcoin for millennials. I've seen it from a distance for a long time, so it's a real pleasure to be able to join, and thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.